Hello, and welcome back to a whole completed new year of watching new movies and discovering new things. So, with this year's end of the year discoveries video, I kind of wanted to do a little bit of a looser format, even more than I've done before. I have just formed a whole big list of discoveries and things that I want to talk about that usually in years past I've really tried to whittle it down, and with each entry I always write kind of a little script for each entry. And with this year, the list is just it is very, very, very long. And so instead of going through each one and writing out a script for each one, I kind of wanted to do a little bit of a looser format and just kind of off the cuff just go through each one of these and talk about them. This is not a review by any means. This is more just me going through, saying my thoughts, and talking about different points that really affected me and what resonated with me. That's what this list is. There's big movies on here that I've finally been able to cross off my list, and smaller, more obscure stuff, and all of them are discoveries for me and affected me in different ways. This is not a tiered list. I don't really have a single this is my main discovery of the year. There's some top ones. There are ones that are incredible and I could really see growing to becoming one of my favorites, but I don't want to put one above the other. And so I think with this year, I'm really going to go in order that I saw them. So yeah, let's just go through this list and let's just see what happens. So at the very beginning of the year, this was actually the first thing that I watched. Like I've said in previous years, one of my favorite genres is the 70s crime thriller. And while this isn't a crime movie, it definitely falls into that paranoid thriller aspect. And this one, it just blew me away. I loved it so much. And that's Capricorn 1 from 1977. These three astronauts are about to take off on a mission to Mars. And right before they're about to take off, they're told that there's some sort of malfunction and that they are being escorted out of the rocket ship. They're put into this back room and they're told by, I believe it's one of their superiors, played brilliantly by Hal Holbrook. He tells them that there is an issue with, I believe it was funding. Like I said, some of the details I might get wrong just because it was in the beginning of the year, but basically that they're going to go ahead with the mission, but they're going to keep the astronauts here and they're going to fake the landing. They're going to completely fabricate it by filming with the actual astronauts, and they're going to make sure that this goes 100% successful. They launch the rocket without anybody in it into space, and then they film this whole sequence of them landing. It airs on television, and then as the actual rocket is coming back to Earth, the rocket blows up on re-entry. And so now you have three astronauts that are supposed to be dead now in this facility. And they escape into the desert. And basically, while this is happening, Elliot Gould's character is a reporter who is starting to get wind of the situation. And it's just this great conspiracy thriller. This is directed by Peter Hyams, who I have really started to get into his filmography lately. Last year I had watched Busting, and that, oh my god, that movie is outstanding. And still I think that movie has the best foot chases in any movie, even to today. Just the foot chases in that movie, the way that they're filmed, get your heart pumping. And with Capricorn 1, he takes this premise of this NASA Mars mission, and he is able to inject so much suspense and action in it, and the cast in this is just incredible. Elliot Gould and James Brolin specifically, I think, are so good in this movie, even though that they're in basically two separate stories happening simultaneously. And I love the conclusion of this movie. There is a plane sequence that I have no idea how they filmed it. It is just endlessly entertaining. I felt the stakes at every single turn. Next is The Boston Strangler by Richard Fleischer. This year, I was really able to delve deep into Richard Fleischer's filmography. There's still some entries that I haven't checked off the list, but I mean, he's got a he's got a massive filmography, so I'll be doing that for a while. But with The Boston Strangler, I remember seeing this on TV a lot growing up, especially TCM. But then last year, I had heard rumblings of people had just watched it, and people that I like listening to their opinions on movies had said that they had watched it. And so I'm like, I'm going to give this a try. It had just come onto the Criterion channel, and so I had access to it. And this movie blew me away on so many levels. I could not believe some of the techniques that he's able to do for 68. The implications of violent acts are so shocking, and the fact that it doesn't show it, like it doesn't show the actual act of it happening, or it doesn't show the aftermath. It just shows these little glimpses, and it implies so much, especially when it comes to the use of split screen. It's so well done. The first half is really focused on the procedural of the whole thing, and then you build up to the reveal of who is playing the Boston Strangler. And a lot of people probably know who it is, but for those few people who don't, I'll leave it at that, because the reveal of who it is, and especially how it's revealed, is so sinister and frightening, and it just, you can feel the weight drop when that reveal happens. And then the rest of the movie is just this great character study. Next up is Kiki's Delivery Service. I'm pretty sure that everybody knows what this is. This is Hayao Miyazaki. He is a director who I've actually only seen this and Spirited Away, and it's something that I want to really correct and try to see more of his movies, but each one of them, I like to almost treat them as an event. And with this one, it is just so laid back and so sweet and peaceful. I love the characters in it. The fact that there's no real villain in the movie, and it's just these situations that Kiki is put into is so refreshing, and it's like a warm blanket, this movie. Next up is Woman in the Dunes from 1964, and this is directed by Hiroshi Teshigahara. This was one that I've had on my list for the longest time, probably ever since I joined Letterboxd. The premise of it sounded right up my alley. I loved the fact that it mostly took place in this one location and became this great psychological drama, survival, almost bordering on a horror movie at some points. This is the best that I've ever seen sand be photographed. I never thought I would say that, but the way that he uses it is so imposing, especially during the sequences where the main character is trying to climb out of this pit. It's just so, you feel the heat of the movie, you feel dirty because of all the sand that's just clinging to everyone in it. I always think of the sequence where he is running from the villagers, and the way that is shot is some of the best horror filmmaking ever. And yeah, the ending is a gut punch. This is, again, a movie that I feel like I need to watch again to really unpack it. But the way that Teshigahara is able to capture this isolated feeling and this ever-growing hopelessness of this situation, it's fantastic. Next up is Set It Off from 1996 and directed by F. Gary Gray. This movie was just a fantastic thrill ride. The main cast is so good together, specifically Queen Latifah. I had no idea she had that in her, and the way that her character evolves over the course of the story is so good, and I think that this movie is so good at being a out and out 90s crime thriller. Next is Winchester 73 by Anthony Mann. I think out of all of his movies, this has been my favorite that I've watched. With Jimmy Stewart, he has always been a favorite of mine. And while he is the main character of this movie, I love the ensemble as a whole and just how it goes from one situation to another following this rifle. Whenever I think of this movie now, I always think of there is this sequence in the beginning involving a contest, and it just keeps going and going and going, and you're always it's funny, it's tense, and you're always wondering how is it going to top itself? Are they going to keep going with this? This is one of the better westerns that I've seen in a long time. So now let's go down a route that for me I had never really heard of this movie before, and that's a movie called No, the Case is Happily Resolved from 1973. And this is an Italian thriller. The whole premise is based around a man witnessing a murder and then the murderer choosing to blame the murder on the witness. And basically it turns into this whole cat and mouse game. And I love the energy of it, especially the setting. Visually, it works so well within the movie. And then next up, I finally crossed off a major movie, and that is The Red Shoes from 1948. And if anybody that doesn't know, this is a Powell & Pressburger movie. Everything has been written about this movie. It's one of the most colorful uses of film ever shot. The story of it is so indebted to this psychological battle that happens with this ballerina. It gets so surreal at points, and the colors just are so vibrant that it all feels like a dream at a certain point. I'm pretty sure a lot of people know this, but there is this extended ballet sequence where you're watching a performance and then you go into the performance. And there's some lighting choices in there where the camera is spinning around in almost a 360 view as these dancers are getting closer and closer and closer to the camera, that it looked like it was shot yesterday. I could not believe it. And the way that they're coming closer and closer to the camera feels so moody and creepy, and I loved it. I loved it so much. Next up, I watched a movie called The Wrong Door from 1990. The Blu-ray label Visual Vengeance was basically the only reason how I found out about this movie. This is a great little 90s all-in-one-night stylish thriller. It's all shot on Super 8, and it has this methodical pace to it, but also the fall atmosphere in this movie, while it's not drenched in, like, let's say pumpkins and all that, but it's got this very Midwestern fall feel. And if you're from the Midwest, you know what I mean. The crunchy leaves, the basically leaveless trees, constant wind. I don't know, it just has this really cozy atmosphere to it. But I love this movie. I thought it was fantastic. Next is The Last of Sheila from 1973. I had heard about this movie for the longest time. It's a big talking point for all the Knives Out movies, and this is probably the closest to those movies. It's essentially the original precursor to all of them, and this movie just by itself is fantastic. It constantly changes what you think the murder or what you think the central plot will be. Everybody is wonderful in this. Specifically Richard Benjamin, who I've always seen him pop up in movies, but this is one where I was kind of blown away by his performance and just how layered it is. The things that are gradually revealed throughout the movie, I just loved. Next, I watched the Canadian movie I Love a Man in Uniform from 1993. And this is a really, really kind of depressing movie to watch. It's great, but where it goes towards the end is just such a downer. The setup to the movie is what really drew me in, where it's this actor who has this bit part on this cop TV drama, and he's got the whole cop uniform, and he's gets really really into character, and then the whole movie is about him kind of losing grip on reality and stealing this uniform and basically thinking that he is a police officer. And just, it's a great character study. But the person that completely steals this movie is Kevin Teague, who just comes into this movie, is menacing, and then he just leaves the movie. You just cannot believe the weight that he carries in this movie. So yeah, it's kind of a little bit of an unknown Canadian movie, and it's one that I just think it's a really, really huge discovery. Next is Nightmare at Noon from 1988, directed by Nico Mastorakis. I love the pacing of this movie. The setup is again what kind of drew me into it, where you have these people basically dump this chemical into this water supply in this small desert town, and then the bulk of the movie is just this small window of time where whoever drinks this water becomes homicidal maniacs, and you follow Wings Hauser, Bo Hopkins, George Kennedy, and just trying to make it out of this town. It's not an all-in-one-day movie, but for the most part it is. But that bulk of it is so well done, and it's crazy the amount of stunts that are in this movie. Brian James is in this movie, and he does not utter a word, and just completely memorable, even though that he doesn't do like any dialogue at all. He just has this presence and this really, really out there look to him. And Wings Hauser too, just brings it to this movie just like he does with every single role. It's crazy, over the top. He's always great to see. So if you haven't seen Nightmare at Noon, it's a great action sci-fi horror movie. So next up, now I know that in the beginning I said that there was not a number one choice. I kind of wanted to not put one over the other. This is the closest out of the entire list. If I had to rank them, that this would probably be number one. I'm not saying it is number one, but just out of every single movie, this is the one that probably just hit the most when I saw it. I have the most fondest experience watching this movie, and that's Fandango from 1985. I cannot remember a time where I was this blown away by a sequence in a movie, and to top it, the fact that this is a debut is just insane to me. The whole structure is very simple. You have 5 college friends, and they're going on this road trip. The end point of this road trip you find out along the way. But the cast in this movie is what really sells it, especially Kevin Costner. To see him this early on, and just to see how charismatic he is, it's just, you can already, if you saw this in 85, you're like, that guy's going to be a star. Now, as for Kevin Reynolds, the director, I feel like now he is known as the director of Waterworld. But to have this movie as your first movie, there are 2 sequences in this movie that are among my favorite things I've probably ever seen. One involving a train. It's very, very short, but just the way that it's done is so effortless. But then you have this 25-minute sequence involving this plane where it mixes humor, suspense, bravura filmmaking. Like, I have no idea how you would be able to do this on your first movie. And the fact that they pull it off, and there's so much setup and payoff in it, I love everything about this movie. Next is A Shock to the System from 1990. This is a crime comedy thriller. It stars Michael Caine. He's always great in almost every single thing that I've seen him in. And this is kind of almost a precursor to American Psycho in in a way where it's this whole corporate satire involving murder and moving up on the ladder and great dark ending to it. I do know that the book originally had a different ending, and I'm kind of split on which ending I prefer. If they would have gone with the ending in the book, it would have been a great Tales from the Crypt, EC Comics type of ending. But for what this movie does with the ending that it currently has, I just like how it goes for it and how dark it gets. So yeah, if you have never seen A Shock to the System, definitely check this one out. Next, I'm actually going to show my hand at one of my biggest blind spots for a director, and that is sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. This is actually my first Park Chan-wook movie I've ever seen. Now, I know that he is a huge name, especially when it comes to Oldboy, The Handmaiden, Lady Vengeance, Decision to Leave, Stoker, Thirst, No Other Choice, Joint Security Area. I just, for some reason, have just never sat down to watch one of his movies, and I just decided to do that with Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, and it floored me. I love the choices that he makes, the deliberate pacing in it, where he will start on a scene and there's life outside of the camera. There's things happening that he chooses not to focus on just yet. And then as things progress, he reveals it. And I loved it. I loved how he constructed this movie. At least for me, it did take some time getting used to. I got to the sequence involving the river, and when things really start to escalate, that's when it all kind of clicked into place on what style he was going for. And then next up is Phantom Thread. This was, again, a huge blind spot for me. Paul Thomas Anderson is one of my favorite filmmakers. Boogie Nights, probably my favorite of his. And now I think that this is a close second. I was glued to the screen throughout the entire duration. I mean, to say that Daniel Day-Lewis in this movie is just otherworldly good would be an understatement. Tone of this movie, the style of it is just all perfect. So after watching Fandango, I did kind of get into a little bit of a Kevin Costner kick. I went ahead and watched A Perfect World for the first time. This movie really did kind of subvert a lot of what I thought it was. It's considerably darker than what I initially expected, especially when it comes to Costner's character. And I think out of every role that he's done, I think that this is his best performance he's given. There's so many layers to it, and especially when you get into this very extended 30-minute drawn-out sequence, that's when it really shows how good he is at playing this character. And next up, I watched Elephant from 2003, directed by Gus Van Sant. This is a movie that basically is told through multiple POVs, and it does this thing where it replays events from different perspectives, and it all culminates into this very unfortunate thing that happens in a school. And if you've seen the movie, then you know where it's leading. But I think what I loved about this movie so much is Gus Van Sant's control over the movie, and just how he is able to meld these different sequences into each other, and especially the pace. For long periods of time, you will just follow characters walking down hallways and walking across fields, and there's no music, there's no voiceover, nobody's talking, and you really just hear their footsteps. I just ended up really loving it. Next, I watched Million Dollar Mystery, directed by Richard Fleischer. So I picked this up from a Kino Lorber sale probably about a year ago, and it just kind of sat on my shelf. But because I was so blown away by the Boston Strangler, I wanted to check this out. One, because I just get a kick out of it's a Mad World ripoffs, and I really wanted to see it because this is Fleischer's last movie, and it's never really gotten a good reception. So threw it on. I really wasn't thinking that it would even make any sort of impact on me. It really did for about 90% of it. The car chases in this movie are incredible, and Fleischer is able to just do stuff in this movie that feels like a Mad Max movie. I'm not joking. Like, it all takes place in the desert, and the comedy that he's able to do with these cars is just so well done. And I think that that's why I wanted to talk about this movie on this list. But I will say the last 5 minutes of it kind of border on ruining it, but for me, it didn't go fully there ruining it. If you've seen the movie, it just kind of, it does not really have an ending. Apparently the whole movie was kind of made to sell, I think it's these trash bags that are used in the movie. I don't know, it's bizarre. And I was loving it up until those 5 minutes. But like I said, I'm not going to let those 5 minutes ruin the whole duration of the movie, especially when I can clearly see Fleischer's style and just how he is able to commit to all of these comedy set pieces. Next is Heard She Got Murdered by Charlie Roxburgh. And I must preference, this is the Blu-ray version that I watched, because if you're in the know of this movie, I think there's like 5 different versions of it, depending on where you watch it from. So this is me putting the Blu-ray version of it on. This is a great follow-up to Heard She Got Married. It goes in a very different direction. For me, this might be, amongst the whole Matt Farley, Charlie Roxburgh universe, I think the Blu-ray version of this movie is the funniest ending they have ever done. And for me, that's even funnier than the Don't Let the River Beast Get You ending, which is fantastic. But there's something about this ending that just, I have never been able to forget it. And if you see this movie, just be prepared for an amazing ending. And so after watching A Perfect World, that kind of took me on a Clint Eastwood kick. And so I finally got around to watching The Bridges of Madison County. I just was completely floored by this movie, both just from how he's able to put this together and from an emotional standpoint. I think that the two leads, Meryl Streep and Clint Eastwood, I think if you were to cast these differently, it would completely ruin the movie, especially when it comes to Eastwood, because his character, if he cannot pull this off acting-wise, this role, it completely ruins the entire movie, especially the first 40 minutes. It's his best direction he's done in his entire career. It's his best performance. He completely changes his whole persona. And the same with Meryl Streep. She is able to bring all of this empathy to this character and all this conflict to it. And again, if you were to play this differently, or if you were to cast it differently and that role didn't work, the whole movie wouldn't work. It's this delicate balance that just all works out. It's like lightning in a bottle, this movie. And I don't know if you would be able to capture it again. The locations that he uses in this is perfect. The structure of it too. That's what really surprised me. And to me, that is also one of the key elements to this movie. Next, I watched The Wrong Man, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. When I initially went into this movie, I was just fully expecting a crime thriller or even a murder mystery. And I was not expecting how emotional this movie gets and how procedural it gets when it comes to the so-called crime that happens. Everyone is fantastic in this, especially Vera Miles, who, her character, I was not expecting how deep it goes into where her character ends up and how she changes over the course of the story. And so this is a movie that is a real big outlier in Hitchcock's whole filmography. It's much more stripped down and character-based and emotional. Next is this 1984 French kind of short film, kind of feature-length film. Depends on what your definition of length is. It's only 48 minutes, but it's this movie called Killing Spree. It's just this crazed killer who goes from one scenario to the next, and all you do is just see him kill one person after the next. But the reason that it's on this list is it is the closest representation of what a nightmare feels like. It's this almost dreamscape that the director is able to create that I have never seen recreated anywhere else. You don't know who anybody is. You don't even know who the killer is. You don't know who the people that he attacks are. You're just dropped into these situations, and it just feels like a horrible, nightmarish dream. And next up is HUD from 1963, directed by Martin Ritt. For the longest time, whenever I saw this title, I was always under the assumption that it was a straight Western, which it is, but it really falls into the genre of the neo-Western. It all takes place in 60s contemporary times, and it really focuses on this one family. The titular role of HUD is played by Paul Newman, and HUD's character in this movie went in a direction that I was not expecting. He is not a traditional, I guess, quote unquote, hero in the movie. He does some very, very bad things in this movie. And the way that the characters react to his actions is what really drives this movie. Then you have these performances around it from Melvyn Douglas and Patricia Neal, who I think are some of the best performances in the 60s. Patricia Neal won an Oscar for this movie for Best Actress, and I think it holds the record of being the shortest Best Actress Oscar-winning performance. With that in mind, it's so amazing that while her character's not on screen that much, her presence is felt throughout the entire movie, and you walk away with so much sympathy for that character, and especially Melvyn Douglas, who up until this point, I may have seen maybe one or two movies with him in it. Whenever I see his name now after seeing HUD, it immediately makes me excited because he is so fantastic in this movie. He brings about this warmth and sadness to the character, especially when he's interacting with HUD. The cinematography in this movie is one of the best. I think that this might be up there with some of the great American movies. Next up is 3 The Hard Way. I must have just watched this movie at the most perfect time because it's so much fun. You've got Jim Brown, Fred Williamson, and Jim Kelly all starring in a movie together. And the plot is ridiculous, to say the least. I will say that the beginning of it starts out a little slow, but once something happens in the movie regarding a use of getting information out of a character, it is so outlandish and crazy that it completely won me over. Next is One-Eyed Jacks, directed by Marlon Brando. I've heard mixed opinions on this movie. It has its people who say that this is one of the best Westerns, and then people just say that they don't vibe with it. They say it's too long, especially with how Marlon Brando acts and directs this movie, which I don't agree with. I loved his persona in the movie, lends to this character wonderfully. And especially when it comes to his relationship and charisma with Carl Malden, who is probably the best he's ever been in this movie. It's a great Western. It's a sprawling epic, essentially. Next up is Bound. I have not stopped thinking about this movie. It does everything that I want a neo-noir to do. I love the whole aspect of these two characters and their connection with each other. And especially, not to spoil anything, but it goes in a direction that I was fully anticipating it taking the traditional noir turn, and it never does that, and I love it for that reason. I love that so much. On top of Gina Gershon and Jennifer Tilly's performances and their characters, you have an entire cast populated by so many wonderful character actors, especially when it comes to Joe Pantoliano, who is just, oh my god, he's such a sleazeball in this movie. But it works for the character. It makes it highly entertaining, and just the set pieces that the Wachowskis create in this movie is just, it's amazing that this is their directorial debut. They're able to do so much with, especially when it comes to the location work, because you really are only in one building, and within that building maybe just a couple of rooms, but they're able to create scenarios that are genuinely suspenseful, especially when John P. Ryan's character is introduced, who I think this may have been one of his last movies, but he has always been a great person to pop up in movies. I always remember him from Runaway Train, and he brings that same intensity to this role. If you haven't seen this movie, it's one of the best noirs of the 90s. Now, to kind of take a little bit of a detour, and the next movie that I wanted to talk about was The Driller Killer. Over the past couple of years, I really tried to dive deep into Abel Ferrara's films, and his style has really stuck with me, especially when it comes to Bad Lieutenant, which I think is kind of a masterpiece. And this one, it just creates this atmosphere, this grimy, dirty atmosphere. And I know it's typically put into the horror slasher genre, based off of some of the kills in it, and especially the poster and the title, but it really isn't that. If you go into it thinking it's going to be a late 70s slasher, I have a feeling that a lot of people will probably be disappointed. It's more of a character study of the main character played by Abel Ferrara. There's these sequences, it could only come from Ferrara's brain, and it's so unique, and things that I really have not seen done in an exploitation movie, especially when it comes to the way that the film opens. There were just these small elements in it that, when stacked up, it just creates this really hypnotic experience. Next is Lady in a Cage from 1964, directed by Walter Grauman. This is a movie that I always get confused with this other movie, and I have yet to see it yet, called Caged. I think that one's from the late 50s. And with this one, for it being the early 60s, the tone and the feel of this movie feels like it is right out of the 70s. It's a very, very bleak movie. Olivia de Havilland in this movie is good, but the person that really steals the movie is a very, very young James Caan. It basically all takes place in real time, of this woman being trapped in her home elevator. But the way that Grauman constructs this house setting, he does these little things in it that make it so interesting. Like, for example, whenever he cuts to outside, it's a suburban neighborhood, but there is a constant line of cars just going past this house and past this house, and a constant string of honking noises and revving engines. And it really sets the tone of, this house feels isolated. Even with all these people around, it feels isolated and dangerous. And it really hits home that theme later in the movie, but right off the bat, he's able to create this really impending doom feeling in just a standard house. And so I think he did a great job directing this movie. Next is The Ambulance from 1990, and this is directed by Larry Cohen. Out of a lot of the movies that I saw in 2025, this was one of the funnest experiences. This movie is an absolute banger. It's got a crazy performance by Eric Roberts, who I love in movies. He makes every role entertaining with the choices that he makes. But the standout of this movie is Red Buttons, who is this, his accent and the way that he plays it. It's like a old curmudgeon New Yorker who is just fed up with everything. He brings so much to this character who, if it were played by anybody else, would be a throwaway character, but his performance in the movie is what takes this movie to the next level. Next is Rabid Dogs from 1974 and directed by Mario Bava. This whole movie feels like one long suspense sequence. And it is a movie that has one of the best endings I have ever seen. On top of having that, you have a psychotic performance by George Eastman in this movie. Oh man, it's kind of hard to talk about this movie without spoiling certain elements of it. I just love how grimy this movie is and how tense it is. Bava directs this movie with such precision and style and tension that it just keeps you glued to the screen. And then next up, I watched a movie called Lautrec. And this is a very, very dark French thriller from 1975. It's essentially told all in real time. The plot is about a young female tourist who is attacked by two hunters. And the whole rest of the movie is her escaping into the woods while the two men and a group of hunters agree to track her down. Again, this is a very dark movie, especially where the third act goes, but it's able to sustain this very, very thick tension throughout, and it just feels like the whole movie is a nightmare. This movie is a prime example of a feel-bad movie. And then after that, I've got another feel-bad movie from 1960, Never Take Sweets from a Stranger. And this is produced by Hammer Films, and it is a departure from their usual fare into horror movies. This I would definitely classify as a horror movie. This movie holds nothing back, and it really does feel like a true horror movie at times. The thing that really sticks with me the most about this movie is the use of silence and no dialogue for very specific characters. And then after that, I watched a movie called Criminally Insane, and this is from 1975, and it is a fantastic regional horror movie from director Nick Millard. Priscilla Alden plays the lead role of Ethel, and she gives an amazingly bizarre performance. This feels like one of the best John Waters movies that John Waters never made. It's hilarious in some parts, and the pacing of the movie I actually think is fantastic. It never gets boring. It constantly changes throughout, and the best part is it is just a little over an hour. Then after that, I watched a movie called Mouchette, and forgive me if I'm kind of mispronouncing that, but this is from 1967, and this is directed by Robert Bresson. What really spurred me onto this was I did a rewatch of one of his movies, L'Argent. When I first watched that, it was actually one of my favorite discoveries. I rewatched it this year for only the second time, and that movie has become one of my favorites of all time. And so it really prompted me to go deeper into his work. And out of his whole filmography, this one really stood out to me. So I chose this one, and it has, again, that Bresson pace to it, and I think now that I know that style and I know what to expect with his movies, it sucks me in, especially with this one. The last shot of the movie, I've never been able to forget. And then for the next one, it's kind of a complete inverse. This is Invasion Force from 1990 and directed by David A. Pryor. Surprisingly enough, this is actually my first David A. Pryor movie. I know a lot of his more famous works like Deadly Prey, Killer Workout, and others, but this one I went into, and it's such a fun movie. I love all the characters in it. The central premise of it, of having this film crew being attacked by these terrorists, and essentially the whole movie just takes place up on this mountain area where they're filming, and it has this very fun pace to it. The ending, it is so good, and it leaves you with a really, really big smile on your face. And then for the next one, Lies from 1983. And this is a movie that's actually been kind of trapped on VHS for a long, long time. It's a real shame because this is a movie where it's best watched with a crowd because there are so many twists and turns in this movie, and you never know what the end result is going to be. Ann Dusenberry stars in this, and she's fantastic. And then Bruce Davison is also in this, and I love it when he pops up in things. He just has this quality to him where he can either be very sympathetic or he can play the most, oh man, just scumbag in a movie, and he plays both of those roles so perfectly. I think he's a great character actor. Go into this movie knowing as little as possible. So this next one gets a lot of flack from people. Now, if you're going into it thinking that it's going to be a proper sequel to the first one, then you will be disappointed. But if you go into this movie knowing that it has very little to do with the first one, I think you will have a fantastic time. And that's From Dusk Till Dawn 2. So the thing that really jumps out to me with this is the direction by Scott Spiegel. He chooses so many different angles. There's so many POV shots in this, and I love it. I loved all of them. It just keeps everything so interesting and fun. It's always entertaining throughout. It really has no ties to the first one, except for you're at the bar for, I think, like 5 minutes, and then there's one character, Danny Trejo's character, returns in this, but he's barely in the movie, but that's at the very beginning of it. But then it diverges into its own thing, and I loved it. I thought this was such a fun movie. And then next up, I've got The Hand from 1981 on my list. I've been meaning to check this out for a long time. This is one of Oliver Stone's first movies. I still have yet to see his very first movie, Seizure, but with this one, apparently a lot of people don't like this, and I don't know, I really loved where this went. The thing that makes this movie specifically is the performance by Michael Caine. I think he gives such a committed performance, and especially where you see him start at the beginning of the movie to where it ends. And just based off of the title and the poster, you think it's going to be one thing, but it really goes down the psychological horror route, and it just becomes very, very entertaining and engaging throughout. And next up, I've got Phantasm 4, Oblivion. Not only is this movie very, very linked to the first one, I mean, the obvious thing is that it uses a lot of deleted footage that was originally filmed for the first one. And that first one is one of my favorites. I think that the atmosphere of that is almost lightning in a bottle. It feels like one of the most perfect representations of what a nightmare feels like. And with this fourth one, it's the closest out of the four that I feel captures that same vibe. Even outside of the fact that it uses deleted scenes from the first one, I think the stuff that Don Castorelli is able to shoot for this one, all the new footage, I think really has an air of that original Phantasm feeling. There's a scene where a cop pulling Reggie over, and just that whole sequence really, really stood out in my mind afterwards. And then after that, I watched Star 80 for the first time. Bob Fosse, all that jazz is one of my favorites. With Star 80, it is a real departure in some ways from the previous things that I've seen from him, but man, does he not pull punches. Like the ending of this, it goes there. I think he tackles this in such a raw way that really, really is effective, especially if you know backstory, given the fact that this is a true story. And man, does he make some crazy, crazy choices in this movie. And I think it's all to benefit that impact at the end. But then on top of that, you have this amazing, amazing performance by Eric Roberts, who really does disappear into this role. And then after that, I watched The Hunger from 1983. This is a movie where I fell in love with the style. I just cannot believe that some of the stuff that Tony Scott was able to capture, and just, it feels so accomplished, some of the stuff that he's able to do. And this is definitely one of the movies where if you're in the right vibe for something like this. Very modern gothic horror tale that's just drenched in smoke and beauty. It's so good, this movie. Now, this next one is a little bit of an obscure one, and it's a 19-minute anthology called Haunted Indiana, and this is from 1981. And this is little shorts that are compacted into 19 minutes, and it has that regional charm to it, but I will say the last segment of this, which probably lasts 3 to 4 minutes, the build up to this monster at the very end of the short, I think is legitimately terrifying. It has that liminal space horror to it, and with the lo-fi-ness of it, it's just so good. It's so good. Everybody should check this out. I mean, it's only 19 minutes, and especially around Halloween time, it makes for a very good time. And then next up, I've got another Richard Fleischer movie, See No Evil, from 1971. And this is another great thriller from him. He uses the camera so brilliantly in this. The whole plot revolves around Mia Farrow's character, who is blind in the movie, and her essentially being stalked by this killer. It all takes place in this English countryside manor. It's kind of a very sneaky, great fall autumn movie. There's always leaves blowing everywhere, but the way that Richard Fleischer chooses to show this killer, you automatically signal in on a piece of clothing he is wearing, which are his boots. And he chooses to focus on these, and they become terrifying in the movie. You never really see his face for the longest time, and that is so cool to do. Especially the opening 5 minutes are so well done and so tense, and you have no idea where that's going. And it's just, I love his style. I think that was my biggest revelation out of this entire year, is how good of a director he is. And next up, this was a huge movie that I was finally able to get to. Martin Scorsese is probably my favorite director, and there's very few movies that I haven't seen from him. But one of the movies that I've been putting off for the longest time, because I'd heard some people saying that it's one of his best and some people saying that it's more of a curiosity, and that's The Last Temptation of Christ. And this movie just completely blew me away with the style of it. I think the way that Scorsese directs this movie, and especially if you know the backstory of how he had been planning this movie for so long, and the funding fell through the first time, which led him to make After Hours, and led him to make The Color of Money, and then he was able to make The Last Temptation of Christ at a smaller budget level. And that sense of what he was probably going through during the making of this, that this could completely fall out from under me at any point. We've got to do this fast, come under budget, and we just have to go for it. That feeling I felt throughout this entire movie. And then you get to the ending, which it is so cool what he is able to do with not only the soundtrack, which is so good. It matches this movie so well. The ending of this movie, you have this crazy psychedelic effect where the camera runs out of film, and it hits perfectly. And apparently, from all reports, that this actually happened, that the film ran out right at this moment. And if that's true, that is one of the greatest accidents, I think, to happen in film, because it is so impactful, this ending. But the thing that really impacted me about the ending was knowing that how much Martin Scorsese wanted to make this movie. How you get to the ending and he's made it. He's finished the movie. And that sense of accomplishment, at least for me, was so impactful. And I think that all the performances in this movie, on top of that, are all great. I've got no issue with everybody having essentially Brooklyn accents. It never bothered me. And yeah, this movie really, really did kind of catch me off guard and surprise me. And then after that, I was able to watch Sneakers from 1992 for the first time. And this is just a fun movie. It's so tense, but at the same time, just endlessly fun to watch. And I think one of the biggest strengths of this movie is the score by James Horner, which at first I was not a fan of. But then when a sequence happens that involves Scrabble, when that score kicks in, man, the rest of the movie, that score just hits so hard. And the whole cast, I mean, you have Robert Redford, Sidney Poitier, David Strathairn, Dan Aykroyd, River Phoenix, Ben Kingsley, Mary McDonald. It's just all these people make this movie and elevate it. And then next up, I watched Barquero from 1970. And this is just a really, really good Western. It's Lee Van Cleef versus Warren Oates. And each one are on either side of the river. And it's this great, tense standoff that, essentially all takes place in one location. Forrest Tucker in this movie. Oh my God. His character is fantastic in this movie. And then next up, AJ Goes to the Dog Park. And this is just a great movie where it's essentially if you mixed the Moturn Media universe of Matt Farley and Charlie Roxburgh, and then you mix that with the Zucker Brothers style of gag-a-minute comedy. My go-to joke in this movie is one person pulls out a leaf blower and blows it towards AJ and his dogs, and then him and his dogs turn into puppets and float away. It's such a fun movie to watch. It's very short, and so it breezes by. And then after that, I watched Campfire Tales from 1997. And I feel like there are a lot of movies out there with that title. And I want to emphasize this is the 1997 version. It's a classic horror anthology. This is one of the better ones that I've seen. So all the segments are kind of plays on different urban legends, and they all have a different twist to them. And for me, the first one specifically, I think, is one of the better horror anthology segments that I've seen in a long time. It has a genuine sense of terrifying buildup. And then the last movie that I wanted to talk about was a banger, and that was Matewan from 1987 and directed by John Sayles. And this whole movie just feels like you're reading a fantastic novel. The location filming is amazing. All of the characters are fleshed out in so many different ways. And again, just like I mentioned earlier, Kevin Teague is in this movie, and he plays such a despicable character in this. It's a movie that makes you angry, but I can't not specify with how well this movie is shot, written, performed, scored. Everything about this movie is nearly perfect. And that is it for the entire year of 2025. There were a lot of movies that I went through. I'm really curious about what were other people's favorite discoveries. I'd love to hear about them. All right, I will see you later.